So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you some slides. I want to thank Howard McGrew because he helped me build this slide set to give you a perspective, because you, the fallen families, have virtually no idea other than what you read in the paper. So part of this is going to be visual, part of this is going to be some explanations, and part of this you'll draw your own conclusion that this was serious business in 1971-72, despite the fact that the newspapers talked about, we're all going home, we're all going home, we're all going home. Okay? So with that said, first slide, Jared. So our area of operation, I'm going to describe that to you. 45 to 55 days of combat operations, jungle mountains and fire-based security. This was our opponent, the 33rd NVA, the 274th Regiment, and then the regional headquarters, and additional folks that had lots of base camps, trail watchers, and 120 millimeter rocket launchers. Our job was to find them, fix them, and then use firepower. Go get them. I always like to say it's not soldier power that we want. We want to just get enough so we can fix them, then bring in the attack birds, whether they were the pink team or the Cobras or the actual Air Force birds. And then lastly, we did have in this area free fire zones, which meant anybody walking around there was fair game. And I will tell you that in some cases, the poor villagers who were out there, they were just trying to make a living. We also know there might have been auxiliaries to the VC or the NVA. And so we had to be careful. And so generally they were okay as long as they didn't carry an AK-47. But we just didn't want to kill anybody needlessly. And then of course we were focusing on the destruction of base camps. And I'd like to underline the 10th Easter Offensive of 1972, which essentially started the tail end of March 1972 and ran all the way into October and November. But we're going to hear more about this. And lastly, Delta Company 2nd 8th were fielded the first two platoons that fired the TOW missile. The TOW missile was a missile that you guided in, and 2,000 meters later, at that time, you could destroy a tank. That's how good they are. They were the precursors to what you hear in the Ukraine about the javelins and some of these other things that are taking out the Russian tanks. But we had the first two platoons, and you're going to see some pictures. And we have people here in this room. We actually served in those two units, okay? And give you an idea of just how intense that combat was. So the only other thing I want to highlight to you is the 33rd NVA and 274th VC Regiment. As a result of what happened in 1968, all of these were soldiers that came down from North Vietnam. That meant they went all the way down through Cambodia, came down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and then came through the 3rd Corps area into our area to fill those units up. In fact, we were tracking packets of 1,500 brand new soldiers feeding those two regiments in March and April of that year. Their job was to hit the rear areas, and that was part of our issues, is we had to keep them on the run in order to protect our rear areas so that the rest of the forces could withdraw, just to give you an idea, okay? Next slide. This was our area of operation. Now, I give you this long arc because on the far right-hand side was the 2nd Battalion, 8th Cavalry, us, okay, with our 4 companies. And that long arc was, we had to take out the 122 millimeter rockets. They were targeting the aircraft in Benoit, as well as the helicopters that we had, whether they're CH-47s or UH-60s, and so, UH-1s and so forth, and attack Cobras. You see some of these fire bases, and we'll talk about some of them. We had all sorts of firefights in some of those areas. And, but that was our area of operation, okay? Most of it was jungle. Some of it was mountainous. And when you were there in a monsoon, it rained incessantly. I mean, incessantly. In fact, it rained sometimes so bad that the birds couldn't fly, okay, our attack birds, and we could barely communicate. So that's how bad it was. Then take that to the dry season, where you were sweating 4 gallons of water a day, and you couldn't get the water fast enough into the bodies of the soldiers. That was the yin and the yang of that environment. Okay, next slide, Jared. Now, I highlighted a little bit earlier that Delta 2nd 8th Cav was in Kontum. It was on Pleiku and Kontum. And here's a picture of the tank killers. Thank you, Roy Adams, for providing that. And where's Bull Dread? He also provided it, okay? So this was serious business. In fact, they had two platoons of 6 of these things apiece. They knocked out 51 cal positions and T-34 tanks. Okay, combat soldiers, Delta, 2nd, 8th. Next slide. So I want to describe a little bit about command and control, reconnaissance, our landing zones, lit birds, gunbirds, pink teams, and so forth. And what I'm going to show you is what that really meant, but at the end it got really down to communications. Could you communicate to make things happen? Whether it's through the artillery side, like John Dullahan was, he was our FO for Ken Rosenberg. Before that, Rick, my favorite Red Leg. But you had to be able to communicate in order to apply the 3 F's, particularly the fire department. Next slide. This is a pictorial view of air mobile operations. There was always a pop smoke, and if you ran out of smoke, that was a bad thing. You had to have smoke, because you got to identify, and sometimes you had to switch smoke because the VCU or NVA might have been on your frequency, and so you don't want to have a bunch of purples out there, and they would say, well, let's give me another color. I identify yellow. Okay, I can land here, otherwise I might get shot up. You see our soldiers getting ready? Now, one thing I want to point out, that green towel, why do you think we had a green towel around our neck? Because you're sweating so bad all day long, and you had the mosquitoes and everything else coming after you. That was the only thing that saved your face.
And
okay?
leeches.
And leeches, okay? So I just offer that to you. You see how they get on the birds? You see down here a landing zone. Again, that, and you can see a pilot trying to take off. And I will just tell you, some of that was pretty dusty at times. And for some pilots, that was a pretty dicey operation. But that was a combat air assault. During my period, from September through March, Delta 2nd 8th had 45 combat assaults. 45. All over that AO, the area of operation that we described. Next slide, Barry. Air mobile operations. Now, in here, you can see the soldiers taking off the skid birds. That's if you could land it. Sometimes you had to jump down. And if you're jumping with a 90-pound rack on the back, sometimes that was not the smartest thing to do. Okay? But you had to get out sometimes to get rid of the dead stuff so you could actually land the bird. Over here, these were the attack birds we had. And they had all sorts of weaponry, and they were, when you had a pink team or a heavy team of these birds protecting you, that was godsend for everybody that was looking dead into the face of an NVA, particularly if they were up against a base camp, much as Stan described and some of the others, or ask Doug Hiltz, because we got into the middle of one. Next slide, please. So life in the jungle. We were the hunters. We were the hunters. We essentially patrol, because we're trying to find it. And no, in our unit, we did not walk along the trotters. Trotters were the little paths that the North Vietnamese had, because we didn't want to get ambushed and we didn't want to run into mines. So we chopped. So you know how we chopped? Machetes. You had to sharpen them 2 or 3 times a day. Okay? And Stan talked about the point man. That also meant that sometimes these paths went like that, and you had to stay on course with a compass. And then you had a guy behind you that was counting how many steps you actually took. Now, you can take baby steps, you can take big steps. But somewhere along the line, you had to have count the steps so you have an idea along that compass heading where you actually ended up. Why? Because at the end of the day, you had to figure out where you were, and then plot the artillery around you so that you were protected in your nice defensive positions. Again, communications as I highlighted. Water, sea rations, and LRP rations. I highlighted again, in the dry season, you could go through 4 gallons of water just like that. Sea rations galore. I will just tell you, I was a big fan of ham and eggs. And after a while, I couldn't stomach it anymore, and I lost about 20 pounds. Now, everybody had a tale about what their favorite was and their non-favorite was. But the thing that saved us, and you'll see it in the letter that Mike Muzikera posted, which was, Dieter Freitag said, please send me a care package of Tabasco sauce and some other goodies. Right? Mike? Okay? And then machetes. And then what kept you alive was you had to have a machine gun that was functional. Now guys, I can just tell you, machine guns are machine guns. Unless you baby them and take good care of them and change out the barrels and make sure the ammunition is clean. The damn things will jam, yeah, guaranteed, in the middle of a fight when you can't afford to have it. It will jam on you, okay? Guaranteed. Ask Doug, he'll tell you about the one I was next to me in jail. Long days, those were logistics days. Every fourth day, we had birds come in, give us water, brought us new clothes, fresh clothes. We changed out the clothes. Now there's some of us who never wore socks, and they had calluses a mile long by the time they finish it. And no underwear. Because why? Because you had to watch out for leeches. And they hit you in the worst possible places you can ever think about. Letters and packages. Every third or fourth day, if you got that log bird, you got letters and packages. You were waiting for that letter from your family. You were treasuring that piece of mail that was coming in. You were treasuring the sundry packs that allowed you to fill things out. And then, of course, scorpion, leeches, and snakes. The worst ones were the bamboo vipers. Okay? Little green little critters. And they were in colonies. And the worst thing is they take you one bite and you weren't going to live very long. I mean, you might even make it to the bird if you had a bird there in time. So I gave authorization every time we had bamboo vipers, shoot the son of bitches, and get the hell out of that area. Okay? We moved deliberately away from it. That's how bad it was. You could survive a scorpion bite. You could take care of the leeches. But the bamboo vipers, that was a no-go. Really bad. And we had, huh?
They were called three stuffers.
Yeah, you take care of the steps and you're done. Next slide. So, we're talking about patrolling. Triple canopy jungle. The light don't shine too good through there. Your eyes get accustomed. And you want to melt in the jungle because you're the hunter. Because you're going after them. Claymores. We had claymores, they had claymores. They helped us at night take care of our defensive positions. They helped us on ambushes. These were the basic weapons carried in a platoon. Next slide. Okay, here is a case of a bunker we found in Delta 2nd the 8th in March of 1972 and April 72, knocked out 4 base camps. A whole bunch of these bunkers. It even had some that had huts on top, which meant they were a little bit more than just a fighting unit. Somebody was doing some staff work there, which meant it had to be a regimental hire. On the left-hand side, trudging, and from the looks of it, it's probably a little bit older because Doug Hiltz will say, Wolf, we never went down trails. These guys went down trails, okay? Not during your tenure. I didn't believe in going down trails. Just was not cool. Next slide. All right, so the basic in the monsoon season was you had to have a poncho, you had to have strings. If you didn't have a string strung and the rains hit you, you're going to be a drowned rat within 5 minutes. If you didn't have that thing, that air mattress, it was off the ground, you're going to have your entire back wet. Okay? And if you didn't clean around all the way around the edges and put some stuff, the juice down, what do we call the juice? The bug juice, guaranteed you would have leeches the next day. Anyway, that was in the wet season. Now notice in the wet season, you see this little thing on the handheld. We rewrap those things 10 million times a day to make sure that the receiver and the transmitter were dry. The other thing you had to watch is the points where they hit the radios, when they stuck together, that they were cleaned out with what? A pencil and a rubber on that pencil. This is Howie. I described Howie as a college freshman who got out and he was smart, and after a while he ran my life. That's how good he was. Skipper, you gotta do this. Skipper, you gotta do that. Who the hell taught you all this? And he said, well, it was Bill Nim. So you blame Bill Nim. Bill, raise your hand. Down here you see somebody, they're sea rats, and you see also mutt, okay? Generally shepherds. Love to have scout dogs along because in one case, they saved our skin. They saved our skin. And here you see somebody getting you rations, and notice this little thing right here. That was a canister for M60 rounds. And down here, laying out smoke so we can tell the guys where we actually located. Why? Because those helicopters that flew above us could go 15 yards from there and shoot and not hit you. That's how good they were. All right, next slide. This is log day, okay? Now everybody looks like they're relaxed, right? Only because what? 2 platoons out pulling security, 1 platoon pulling stuff off the bird. Yeah, that guy that looks on the left all spiffied up, that was the first sergeant. But the rest of them, notice they have the duffel bags with the fresh clothing and the sea rations coming in and so forth. Next slide. All right, over here. This was the RTO, my FO. That was John Dillahan's predecessor. We fired more rounds making sure that we were taken care of and had ourselves buttoned up. And every time that we got close, we thought we were going to have somebody around us, I made sure we registered because I was not going to waste time looking for somebody to get me around close by to take care of folks. Down here, you see one of our soldiers at the log day getting news. Shoot, I got a Chicago Tribune free every time. Passed it around. That's how I caught up on news. And of course, what I read was, they're all going home. There's nobody out there in the field. Well, we were out there in the field, and we're chasing them left and right. Over here, this is a picture during dry season. Notice that these are little jugs, plastic, water. You had a dry hole, you were looking for water. Shoot, we maneuvered toward water on some of these days just to find water because we had to have it. Okay, that's how bad it was. Next slide. Fire bases. Now, on the fire bases, you had what I call the redlegs, which was at least six 105 howitzers, sometimes there was a 155, and we had our own battalion warders, and we had what I call S details. You can figure out what the word S details, right? So you either build security, or you burned stuff, okay? Didn't smell too good, and you had other fire base details like putting in new barbed wire. But we had showers. Little 5-gallon Aussie thing. Everybody was buck naked. You showered up, and you had about 3.5 minutes. You have a rinse, and get soaked up, and that was it. Then we had mules. These were the little carts that went back and forth, okay? But we also had monkeys. Why? Those were the treasures that Colonel Tom Blagg had, and everybody loved their monkeys. And where's Joan Rosenberg? We have a picture of your father bought one of those cages with those 2 monkeys. I think they had a special name. One of you guys will probably tell me what the special name was. Jojo was one, and I don't know what the other one was. Mutts. Now, mutts were forbidden, okay? Except everybody stuck on them, okay? And after a while, you had house cleaning because there were too many mutts, but that was okay. And then we had the Tactical Operations Center. Now, Trim Sawtell will tell you, sometimes that's a bear, and sometimes it's okay, especially when you got to go out and play volleyball with the old man, which was Colonel Blagg, who loved playing volleyball afterwards. And it wasn't just any regular volleyball, it was combat volleyball. But that was the entertainment after the entertainment of the 6 o'clock follies that always happened. And then we had the LZ pads, the landing zone pads, and if you were lucky enough, you had a quick reaction force drill, and I'll share with you a picture about quick reaction force drills. And finally, log birds and command and control birds, okay? But that was life on the fire base. Now, 12 days or 14 days, 15 days in jungle, 3 days on a fire base, sometimes 6 days on a fire base. And then you had 3 of these rotations. You might finally get to the 45th day, and then you had R&R down to Bogota. That's how the cycle went, okay? Next slide, please. So these are fire bases. Over here on the left, that one was Jeffries. You see the Delta Sec of the 8. And yes, there was a newbie shining his boots. That's the last damn time I ever shined boots. Because by the time I got into the 5th or 6th month and we went out to one of the officers club by the Air Force, we had these tight little bands around us. There was the leech bands, right? And the shoes were almost white because we got leached out from all of that. And these were brown boots, right? They got leached out. They bought us drinks. If I'd have shined my boots, I'd have been paying my own drinks. So that was a smart thing to do. This was Firebase Melanie. Melanie belonged actually to the TIE division that was there, outside Bearcat. The problem was it was a big circle. And Colonel Tom Blagg says it's easier to defend it because you can put one platoon on each side, and so we're going to make a triangle. That was all fine and good, except the place was overrun with rats. Okay? So bad that we slept on tables like this, and the damn things would come in at night. So then we had a rat catching party. And the platoon that got the most amount of rat tails got a case of beer. Now that took care of a few thousand, okay, but the hygiene in itself was just absolutely traumatic, okay. Down here on the left, I'm showing you one that was a built out fire base. You can see the shower head I was just talking about. You can see the revetments and so forth, okay. And then over here, you can see one that was in the process of being built. And this one up here was Mikowski. That was named after PFC William Mikowski, that died in battle, a hero, machine gunner, on the evening of the 21st of October, 1971. That's also one of those that Doug Hiltz invited myself, Jim Garvin, and Kirk Davis, and Dizzy Blaze, and our wives to be up there in Buffalo, New York. And we did it 50 years later to the day.
In the monsoon.
In the monsoon, for real, okay? And Stan was talking about the 78-year-old, okay? Please hurry up and quit talking. Well, we had something, they were at least maybe 65 to 75 years old. He hadn't hit the magic number of 78. But it was quite an adventure. And the one thing we learned was families who hadn't talked to each other for 50 years talked to each other again and shared information that was absolutely shocking. Stan talked about one. We had another situation where they had blamed the girl for causing the guy to go to Vietnam and get killed as a result of it. Okay? Cut off all communications. Anyway, next slide. Now, this was life on a fire base, if you were good, okay? Notice, this is the same air mattress. This guy was lucky he even had a stretcher.
That's the Hilton.
Huh? That's a Hilton right there.
Yeah.
That's a Hilton. Okay? Now, on top of that, you see the sandbags, right? My first night on Firebase Jeffries, in comes 3 105 rounds. Hit a couple culverts down, and I'm saying, what the hell? I'm getting up, and all I can hit is hit the damn thing with my head, and I hadn't got my helmet on yet. And I was looking for my weapon. That I learned a long time ago after that. You know exactly where your weapon is. You know exactly where your helmet is. And it might be a smart idea, if you think there's incoming, you get your boots on.
Uh-huh.
Okay, here you see some guys that were told to go clean up the a revetment, probably breaking down that thing. And this was welcome home the 2nd 8th, the Eagle pad that we had, and you see all the wire strung all over the place. But that was life on a fire base. And as somebody said, that was the Ritz-Carlton on a fire base right over there for the soldier. Next slide. Now, we did have what I call donut dollies and American Red Cross workers. Yes, these are the mules that we use to move things around the internal fire base. These ladies come by not very often. In fact, most of the time they had to be shanghaied to come out of Long Bin because the colonel persuaded a USO troop to come. These were the weapons that we encountered out there. Those are serious weapons, especially if you got inside the 15 to 20 yard line and you snuck up on them. This is Robin Wu. The interesting thing is, Wolf, that's the first time I've seen that picture in 50 years. That was last week.
Wow.
Okay? So I'm sharing with you the importance of sharing the pictures, okay, of your fallen hero with everyone else and put it on the Never Forgotten 34 Facebook page. It's that important, okay? Over here, those 2 monkeys we were talking about. I don't know which one is JoJo and what the other one was. Well, there he is, okay? And then here's another mutt. This one happens to be a female, highly pregnant, adjacent to a 105. I don't know if she jumped off when they fired it at night, okay? But most likely did. Next slide. So here's some more pictures, okay? This happened to be a combat volleyball game. Notice it had reinforced string on top because the damn things would break. Okay?
The guys are climbing up.
Yep. And then down underneath here, You can see somebody having to dig and put some more sandbags on top. And again, the treasure of the Hilton right there. This happened to be a nice festive dinner, probably Thanksgiving 1971. And just to show you how serious it is, these were Rangers getting ready to go in the field, because every third day or fourth day we'd have a Ranger team, and we insert them in the best places to see if we can see where the enemy was. And they were getting ready to go in an operation. My job as a battalion student, and Ken Rosenberg, as his when he was the S2, was to make sure they were going in a place we said we wanted them to go. Okay? So I had a lot of additional combat assaults of inserting all these Rangers, because I want to make sure that they had landed where I wanted them to go, and we verified their location. Next slide. Okay, I think this is the last one, Firebase Makowski, Firebase Melanie. This was Makowski, probably the third day that we occupied it. Hell, I didn't know until 20 years later we had a firefight right out there, because my guys had to report to the base commander, not to me. Okay, that was the CP right there. And yes, after a while we had to learn how to dig that into it. Over here, this was Firebase Melanie. What it doesn't show was that this was one of the top places. You can see the flag behind it. This was our First Lieutenant McConaughey, who was the Skull Platoon leader. This was Robin Wu, who became our RTO. And you see these weapons on the ground. We've just come back from R&R. We had strewn all sorts of stuff all over the place. And one young hero decided that the trip play ought to go off. And all of a sudden we had ammunition going off. Not a cool thing to do. And on top of that, battalion commander says, get your company out here. We got another one in trouble, and you need to be inserted to have a combat fight. So that was quite a situation, but that was reality. Yes, sir.
You happen to forget one young officer back there on the far right?
Yeah, I don't know who that young hero
I don't
was.
know who that is either. I think his name was Wolf.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Not very good looking. Shows you he was there. In
Anyway,
spades.
does this give you an idea as to what we all went through? Okay, give you a perspective. That's the kind of life that your sons, your husbands, okay, your uncles, okay, went through during that period. Now, with that said, I think that was the last slide. Yes, Jared?